When I was growing up, Hasley Cemetery was a favorite playground. We rode our bikes there after baseball practice. We walked its darkest trails on Halloween night. When we were older, we took girls there too. Park. Last weekend I was back in Louisiana, and went back to Hasley Cemetery, no longer a playground but a pilgrimage. I made the trip to pay respects to another close relative, who had died back in March, but on Memorial Day I found myself walking the old lanes of Hasley Cemetery and attempting to find my parents' graves. I should note that the symbolism that signifies Memorial Day weekend for most Americans was not lost on me. It just carried a slightly different meaning this time, just as I think graveyard visits for most of us, on any given occasion, carry different meanings. In that same vein, and in a case of what some might call synchronicity, in recent days I had a chance to hear excerpts from interviews that NPR's Terry Gross did with the author Philip Roth, who died on May 22 at the age of 85. In one of them, Roth talked about his book, Everyman, and speaks a lot about mortality, and about visiting his parents' graves. "Yes, I do visit the gravesite of my mother and father," Roth said. "And yes, I do feel closer to, if not to the dead, to their memories when I'm there. I'm rather glad that my parents were buried in the ground in a box and not cremated and their ashes scattered somewhere. When I finally did find my parents' graves, near the shade of a pair of pine trees, I too was thankful that they had chosen a cemetery plot. There was no flag on my father's grave, nor did I place one there. Though he served in World War II, he did not die on a foreign field. I may be a bit old-fashioned about this, but I think Memorial Day should be reserved for those who died, if not in battle, then at least during wartime. At any rate, my parents' graves were not in the greatest shape. I brought fresh flowers to lay, because I knew that my niece had placed artificial ones in the main centerpiece holder. The fresh ones slid around, though, because the double stone had shifted in the ground, and tilted, so that my mother's stone rode about 4 inches above my father's. Is on my list to contact the Hasley caretaker about this, but the lopsided nature of the stone added some bit of absurdity to the whole undertaking. Ironically, it was my partner, who had never seen the graves before, who teared up as she lay her pebbles down on my mother's stone. I was more stoical, though I admit to being thankful to have a place to go to truly remember them, those who brought me up and shaped me into the person I am. Perhaps it was the mere fact of seeing their names in the stone together, and recalling for the first time in years that my father's middle name was Alec. Back in April, staff writer Svetlana Shikolnikova reported on the growing preference of cremations over traditional burials. In 2016, the cremation rate inched past 50% for the first time, according to the National Funeral Directors Association, she wrote. 2025, it is expected to become the disposition of choice for 63.8% of people who die in the U.S., and by 2035, 78.8%. I contemplated all this as I stood in the Louisiana sun, and took the measure of the life of my parents, who in 1963 had to bury their own daughter in another cemetery not so far away. I thought about what it must have been like for them that day, and remember every year after that when I was growing up visiting my sister's grave, especially at Christmas time, to lay poinsettias, and listen to piped-in organ music playing the old holiday hymns. Now that I live so far away, my visits to my parents' and sisters' graves are fewer and will, as my own time here grows shorter, grow fewer still. In turn, this makes the visits I do make all the more meaningful. Bruce Lowry is the editorial page editor for The Record. Reader share the story, https://njersey.co/2lvmh5r